hidden in that giant monstrosity of bill that the Congress passed, giving money to Taiwan and Israel, which makes maybe a little more sense, and just $61 billion to Ukraine, there was something else. Was that basically that the President of the United States is going to confiscate all Russian assets within the domain of the United States. Now, I think that's a big step right there. Well, a really big illegal step to do that to any country that you're not at war with. But the real issue here is that we want Europe to follow suit. There's about $300 billion worth of Russian assets frozen in Europe. This is a big deal. We need to talk about this. Welcome to the Poplar Report. I'm Steve Poplar. I'm an accountant by trade, and $300 billion is a lot of money. Given the fact that we're all kind of really upset about $60 billion going into the black hole, I want you to imagine $300 billion from a much poorer country. If you think that Russia won't be mad as anything, if you want to burn bridges, if you want to make sure that there is never, ever going to be peace between our countries, that's a pretty good way of doing it. Now, I want you to understand that there's these things called Vienna Conventions, Geneva Conventions. Geneva is mostly about warfare, but some of those refer to the seizure of private citizens' assets and private citizens' goods. You can't just go take people's stuff. Like, if you invade a country, your soldiers can't, just take people's stuff. That's a cool necklace. We're just going to take that out of that house. That's called a war crime. You're not supposed to do that. Now, if you need to do stuff because of war and stuff like that, use a table to hide behind, you're allowed to do that. You're allowed to occupy a house. But you're not allowed to just loot stuff. Those belong to people. And you're not allowed to just seize things unless you're at war with countries. And last I checked, the United States and Russia are not at war. And yet the United States is going to seize government assets and private Russian citizens' assets. Now, we've seen that already where private yachts and stuff like that from oligarchs and stuff like that. I understand the European Union seizing people's yachts is probably not the highest priority on your list of anything. But if you don't want us to get into a nuclear war where we destroy the earth, yeah, it is kind of actually an important thing to talk about. Because what we're doing is we're burning bridges after burning bridges. We're making it so that peace negotiations cannot happen. Absolutely cannot happen. We cross these steps, we're going to be in the cycle of war for as long as we can imagine. Russia will not back down. $300 billion is a lot of money. Now, I know the United States just kind of dumps $300 million over here, $300 billion over there. Not really that big of a deal. You know, that's like a third of the Defense Department budget for a year. But that's more than what the Russians spent on their Defense Department, and they're at war. So that should give you kind of a bit of a clue of how big of a deal this is. This is kind of more like $1 trillion to Russia or more. And given the state of their economy and everything like that, it's a really big deal. Are they going to just be okay with that? We're hearing that the United States is apparently going to send 60 U.S. soldiers to Ukraine as advisors. Where have we heard that before? Where do we used to send advisors? Oh, that's right, Vietnam. Yes, that's right. That's how that war started. The United States sent advisors, didn't we? And how did that turn out? Did that turn into a war? Or did that turn into, de-escalated, negotiated peace? Yeah, that that went to war. Oftentimes where we send advisors in, that turns into a war. Now, I don't know, I didn't see from the article whether they're Green Berets, but there probably are Green Berets because that's what they do. They advise and they train. Now, if they're specialists, they're training in something technical, maybe they're not Green Berets. But us sending 60 soldiers openly, without hiding it, is going to provoke Russia. And it seems like NATO and the United States are openly trying to provoke Russia. You wouldn't do these things otherwise. It seems like the weapons that we've just promised to give to Ukraine, France talking about sending troops to Ukraine. And I just saw something on Twitter where there's all these reports and a couple YouTube posts here and there where everyone was talking about French troops arriving in Odessa. Now, I tried to source any of that, and it was just all gibberish. But yet we saw a lot of these accounts chattering about this. Very much like a propaganda campaign or a disinformation campaign that would be run by the three-letter agencies. And I was thinking to myself, who benefits from even trying to gin this up? Like, are they trying to get Americans upset? Or what's happening here? And I think what it was, and this is speculation, but I think what's going on with that is the three-letter agencies are trying to provoke Russia. I think that they're trying to get Russia to lash out and to respond in some way or make some comments or escalate things in such a way that it's going to justify NATO and the United States stepping in militarily to defend Ukraine. It seems like the powers that be are trying to pull us into the war now. And when we start talking about the United States going into the war in Ukraine, suddenly the money doesn't really matter anymore, does it? And I think that that's what we're seeing from Washington, D.C., is that they're starting to get that mindset where we're going into the war, so the more money we send, the faster. That's just going to make things easier down the road. They're seeing the United States and our European allies, always a joke, getting pulled into the war, which basically means that 75% of the fighting will be done by American soldiers and 25% of the fighting, maybe, will be done by all of our allies. That's the reality today. I mean, that's what happened in Afghanistan. That's what happened in Iraq. It's like you have the American army, and then you have this little detail over here, which is all of our allies who supplied some troops or some equipment or whatever. And they're going to go capture some towns, you know. But the United States Army is going to do all the fighting and do all the big stuff because that's what we're there for. We're there to bail out the entire world and to fund the entire world's stupidity. And we contribute to the stupidity of the world a good bit too, because we're so core to it all. But this is going to provoke Russia. And why are they trying to provoke Russia? They're trying to do that in order to give a justification for the United States and Europe to get into Ukraine. Mark my words, and I think that if we start looking at logistics supply chains, because once again, amateurs look at the shooters, look at the military units. Professionals look at the logistics supply chains. If this is what's happening, we're going to start seeing the supply chains being built. We're going to start seeing ships moving. We're going to start seeing a lot more equipment moving. And we're going to start seeing units are starting to get prepared to being deployed overseas. Now, they're going to keep that on the down low. So I'm going to start watching a lot more closely to see if we start seeing movement, both in the United States, but then also with our allies, because the allies are more likely to tip the hand and give something away. That's what happens when you have a whole bunch of partners, is that somebody We see North Korea do this for the BRICS countries and such. North Korea starts transmitting something, you're like, yeah, I don't think they were authorized to say that, but that does give us an indication what China and Russia are thinking right now. Same thing with Iran. Sometimes they kind of telegraph something that they're not supposed to let off because that's still supposed to be a secret. And Belarus too. So we'll be watching very closely some of these U.S. allies to see if they are making logistical preparations for deployment. Particularly, we're going to be watching Poland and Romania to see if anything is moving, because that could really give us an indication that things are getting serious. Now, if we're openly trying to provoke Russia, and at the same time we're starting to make logistical wheels are starting to turn, I think that will actually provoke Russia even more, because they're going to realize that this war is happening one way or another. So they better take the element of surprise that they can, because they're not going to get a second shot at it. And friends, I don't see any way other than us moving straight into World War III. And maybe that's what this Repo Act is about, is basically it's an opening shot of the war. The idea that we're going into war anyway, so let's start seizing their financial assets. I don't like where this is all leading, and the world is changing once again. And friends, we see all these big things happening with big people and big movements and countries and nations, and we can all feel very small about this. It's like, I didn't vote for that, right? In fact, no Americans voted at all to getting involved in these things, did we? I don't remember seeing a referendum of, do you want to give $500 of your taxpayer dollars to Ukraine? And that's about roughly what we've given so far. Every single taxpayer has given about $500 so far. I don't recall there being a vote on that. I'd like to give some money from my pocket to fix some potholes on the road in front of my house, but I don't know about that much money giving out to other countries, countries that aren't even our allies. But Steve, they're our allies. No, they're not. They've never promised to defend the United States, and even if they did promise, it wouldn't mean anything. Not like they could actually come over and help us. If someone attacks the United States directly, Canada maybe will help. Maybe Mexico could help, but no one else is going to help us. Like, they can't, and they won't. So everyone who talks about, our allies is really, it's really a joke. We do what's in their best interests all the time, and we never get anything in return. So, except for them using our dollars, and Europeans use their euros, so we don't really get that out of them. But this is a big deal. The Repo Act that was tucked into this bill is a big deal. Didn't they tuck the TikTok divestment thing in there too? The only amendment I liked to this thing was Marjorie Greene's amendment, which was every lawmaker who votes for this bill must immediately go to fight in Ukraine. That got voted down, if you can imagine that. But that would have been a good amendment. Every lawmaker that voted for it should have to go and fight for Ukraine. They're great about giving other people's money away, because they believe so passionately in these things and they're waving their little Ukrainian flags. But when it really comes down to whether they're willing to go fight, whether they're willing to send their children off to go fight there, the answer is no. They'll send your children. They'll send the children of our friends and family members, but they won't send their children. And they're okay sending your dollars, but they won't send their dollars. That's about as hypocritical as it gets, and that's right where Washington, D.C. lands on everything. We're just going to go around confiscating money that's not ours in order to provoke a war that other people will have to fight. Other people will have to suffer. All right, friends. Well, if we make it to November, remember these things. And we'll see if that makes any good or does any good. But until then, I will see you guys later. If you want to check out another video from this channel, there's one right up here. I'll see you over there, or I'll see you guys later. Steve Poplar of the Poplar Report, out.